where we say, I am that, and God answers, not saying, yes, you are, but rather, I am. I am that, I am. So that was the basis of the book and the movie. Now, when the movie was over, there were about 1,000 people. There was a big audience, and I was very excited to answer questions. And so when we opened it up, the very first woman who stood up to share something, she took the microphone, and the first thing she said is, "You have desecrated one of the most important spiritual teachings in Judaism." I thought, well, that's not a very good beginning. I said, "Well, please tell me how so I can remedy it in some way." And she explained that I had turned one of the most sacred letters and symbols in Judaism and Kabbalah, which is called the Yud, which looks similar to a comma, and turned it into a comma. And she began to tell me all about the Yud, and it's the hand of God, and it brings inspiration, and I had reduced it to a comma. And finally, she just threw the microphone down on the ground and just stormed off. Well, you can imagine what I thought. I've got to find out more about this Yud, because if this is going to be the very first question asked the very first time that movie is shown, I might get asked this again, and I'm going to need to get some information. So, who do I call? I call Mr. Phil Gruber. He is the authority on everything esoteric, and in particular Kabbalah, Judaism, anything that comes from that beautiful teaching. And I told him what happened. I said, "Phil, you need to teach me about the Yud." He said, "Well, I will, but I don't want to do it over the phone. I don't want to just meet somewhere in New York, wherever it may be. Let's go to Paris. I'll teach you all about the Yud in Paris because there's so many examples." So we did. We met, I think, in Geneva, took a train to Paris, and as we're going through this, I'm thinking, boy, this would make a great book. Everything that we're sharing here and everything he's teaching me, because I still know next to nothing about Kabbalah, but the way that Phil brought me through the experience, through all these beautiful churches and sites there in Paris, was breathtaking. So I want to thank you for that, Phil. It's one of those little hidden gem books that not a lot of people know about, but if you are sparked, you should check it out because it's a wonderful story. Phil, do you want to say anything about that?
Um, yeah, it was an amazing experience. At that time, I was at my sister's in Austin, and I was depressed. And I remember talking with Jimmy, and you were going to do Moses Code seminars and retreats in Luzerne, remember, and then in Holland, and there was a few days in between. So you invited me to come and help to facilitate those Moses Code workshops. Just a word about the Moses Code. The man who directed The Secret, came in and you reshot the Moses Code. And I remember the one thing he said. I can't remember his name right now. What's the guy who directed The Secret?
His name is Drew Harriet, and
Drew Harriet. And when they were finished with the Moses Code, Drew said, remember, Jimmy? He said, "This is what I wanted The Secret to be."
yeah,
Not so much about accumulating wealth and status, more about a relationship with God and what your destiny is,
that's right.
that sort of thing, and more about giving what you have to give. So this is why the Moses Code is absolutely amazing. And I really do think one of the reasons that Jimmy invited me on that trip to Europe was because I had felt so bad, because originally I think you had asked me to help you with the Moses Code. And when I finally got around to calling you that one day, I remember I was in New York and I said, "Jimmy, I'm ready. I got all this research." And Jimmy said, "Oh, I've already written the book." The book is done and the movie's done. And so I think you could hear me groan over the other end of the phone. You could hear this sigh,
Yeah, I remember
So,
very
but
well.
it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. We really using the names of God in the proper way, with the proper reverence, with the proper understanding, of how just powerful they are and what channels and gates they can open up. we had just amazing experience. Well, Jimmy really had the experiences, but I had the experience of also being there and witnessing the amazing states, these states of transcendent poignancy that we both shared in these sacred places, in these churches and other sacred places. And we did our best to document that to the best of our ability. And this is why I think it's a really unique kind of book and a unique adventure. And like Jimmy said, many, many adventures we've had over the years. I think it's 25, 26 years now since
At
we
least.
met in the halo of this double rainbow in
That's right.
Colorado,
Yeah,
in Loveland, Colorado.
that's right.
So I'm really, just like everybody else, I'm really looking forward. I mean, it's wonderful hearing about our extraterrestrial and interdimensional roots and everything like that. But just as important, I think it's important to return to that state of innocence also, and to
Well,
learn about peace. And nobody better than, I think you are, such a great man of peace, and what you've done throughout the world, throughout all these years since you put the peace prayers of the major religions to music. I don't think I can really not think of anyone who's done more in the interest of peace than you have. So it's just such an honor having you speak for Wish Alliance, and just to know that you're there, that you're still with us.
oh, I'm still very much with you.
I'm
In
always
fact,
with you.
let's dive a little bit deeper into what
Okay.
we were just sharing about the spirituality and the awakening and the opening that's before us right now, and the opportunity that we have to step into that in this moment. You mentioned Drew Harriet, who, as you said, was the director of The Secret. And it was an amazing thing because I started writing the Moses Code right after I watched the movie The Secret. And I remember very well watching that movie. I had two main thoughts. Number one, this is a very good movie. It's going to be really popular, as it was. The other thought was, oh no, this is going to be really popular. And this stops so short of what the real teaching is, what I call the soul's law of attraction, as opposed to the ego's law of attraction. So it was The Secret that started the whole process. So then after I wrote I'll come back and talk more about that in a moment, but after I'd written the book and the movie was finished, I was in Los Angeles and I was with my dear friend Debbie Ford and Drew and another man named Mickey. And I wanted them to see it because Drew and Mickey were filmmakers. Debbie, as you know, wonderful spiritual author. And I wanted them to be the first to see it. I was hoping they would love it. I'd been working on this for a year. I was happy with it. After we finished, I turned to them and said, well, what do you think? And they all said, it's okay. It's good, but they knew that it wasn't done. They somehow all knew that there was more. And Drew said to me, he said, I haven't had 2 weeks off in years, but I don't have anything going on for the next 2 weeks. And if you want, you and I can work together 24 hours a day for the next 2 weeks. And I promise you, we can pull this together and make this a great movie. So it was a hard decision, but I said yes. And he was right. We worked day and night for the next 2 weeks. In the end, we ended up reshooting 70% of that movie. We re-edited 100%. It was a different movie by the time we were finished. And he was right. I'm so happy with it. It was a beautiful film. And it's just amazing that something that he made at the very beginning, The Secret, was what began the journey. And here he was at the very end, helping me to complete it. So I thought that was beautiful. But to go back a little bit more into what the Moses Code really is about, just a few months ago, we released the new, revised, updated version of the Moses Code because I think it came out in 2008, maybe. So quite a while ago. So it was so fun for me to revisit it, to go through and add maybe 40% more material. We recorded an audiobook, which you can get at Hay House. And it really, it re-sparked my passion for this subject, more than anything for understanding what the soul's law of attraction is really all about. What I usually say is that both the soul and the ego have a mantra. The ego's mantra is, I want. I want this, I want that, and it never ends. There's always something new to want. But the soul's mantra is very different. Instead of I want, it says, I am. Here we are back at that name of God that was given to Moses at the burning bush. And if you think of that story for a moment, thousands of years ago when the Israelis had been held captive in Israel, building these great structures and temples and cities, and here's Moses, an old man out in the desert, told to go to the most powerful man in the world, the Pharaoh, and ask him, not ask him really, that say that the one God wants you to release all of these Israelites. And Moses knew the impossibility of such a thing ever happening. And yet when he told Moses his name, you have to understand how important that was, because at that time, God was not known as a name. It was a title, the God of Abraham, the God of our forefathers. But when Moses said, who shall I say to the children of Israel sent me? He asked a question that had never really been asked before. And so when God said at first, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, that was significance. But then he said, tell them I am sent you. I am. And just a little while later, Moses comes to his senses and says, hold on, even Abraham and Isaac, or was it Abraham and Jacob? I forget, couldn't do what you're asking me to do. And what does God say? This is very interesting. God says to him, yes, but to Abraham and Isaac, I did not give my name. In other words, there is power within those two words in any language, I am, or I am that. It is an activating formula, code, I guess you could say, that changes not only our lives, but the entire world. Because what you're doing is you're claiming the truth of who you are, as opposed to the ego's voice, which is, I want this, I want that. What you're saying is, I don't have it now. Whatever it is that I'm longing for, whatever it is that's burning inside me, I don't have it now, so I want it. But I'm always going to look for things outside of myself to try to solve that problem, or to somehow help that yearning, fulfill that yearning. Of course, we know it never works, because as soon as you get that car or that house or whatever it is the secret says you're supposed to be trying to get, as soon as you get it, you're onto something else. And that's why it's goodness that our soul is longing for, not goods. It's well-being, not wealth or physical wealth or the ability to buy whatever you want. It's more about giving rather than getting. This is what the soul is longing for. And for me, throughout my whole life, one of the great teachers of that has been St. Francis of Assisi. Phil mentioned Francis earlier. And when I was a very young child, I was very drawn to Francis. And when I was 18, I left home and moved to Chicago in order to enter the Franciscan order. And I have a story going through my head, and I'm debating if whether I should say it or not. What the heck? We're all friends, right? Since I told an embarrassing story about Phil, I'll tell one about myself. But it just goes to show how we're being led and guided constantly. So I became a Franciscan. I was only 18, and I knew I still had a lot of living to do. So I left after about 2 years, finished school. Right after I finished school, I met an amazing woman named Linda. It was Linda who got me into metaphysics, into A Course in Miracles, and just opened up a whole new world for me. And so when I was with Linda, we had been together for about a year, and that question came back. Now that you've had an amazing relationship, which are you going to choose? Are you going to get married and raise a family, or go back to the order? And I was very confused about this. So I decided I was going to go back to a monastery that I'd lived at for a few months earlier in my life. and spent about 3 months there praying about this and asking for guidance. And Linda was very understanding. And she didn't like it, of course, but she was very supportive. So we were very gentle with our physicality. I'll put it in a gentle way for about a month before that, because I had a feeling that I would not return, so I didn't want to make it more difficult for her than I had to. But the night before I left for the monastery, we were in Chicago. We went for a beautiful dinner downtown, went for a carriage ride, one of the most romantic nights of my life. And as you can imagine, it was a very full evening. Okay, now jump forward. Oh, but I should say that the only rule that was on me at the monastery was that I could not have any contact with Linda while I was there. So here I am now praying for a sign. What should I do? And about a month into it, Linda calls me up and said, well, at first I say to her, honey, I'm not supposed to be talking to you. What's up? And she said, well, I just want you to know you got the answer to your prayer because I'm pregnant. And that's how our amazing daughter showed up in the world, who's 35 now. So that was quite a while ago. But it's amazing how we're always given what we need. That was the sign that I needed. And yet still that yearning for simplicity and that very down to earth, very nature based relationship that Francis had still called to me. And I had many times when I would think about maybe returning one day to the order. I just knew that returning to the Catholic Franciscans wasn't going to work for me. So you may see at the bottom of my name there, it now says Brother James Francis CFC. That stands for the Community of Francis and Clare. I just about 2 weeks ago was officially a member of an Anglican or Episcopal Franciscan order called the Community of Francis and Clare. I've been with them for about a year now and was received into the novitiate about maybe 3 weeks ago now. So finally, after so many decades, it's a way of me being true to that first spark that came from Francis and continues still. This, of course, is a much more resonant way for me. They have a very different attitude toward the vows. Instead of poverty, for example, it's all about simplicity. Instead of celibacy, it's about chastity. Of if you're married, you're chaste with your partner, and obedience to the Holy Spirit or to the guidance that we're always receiving. And I think that brings us full circle because it is all about guidance. It's about knowing that that still, quiet voice is always with us, guiding us away from that preoccupation of the outside back within. So it's once again, it's not about goods, it's about goodness. And whether it be St. Francis or whoever it is that inspires that within you, follow that voice because the world so needs this today. We have gone in a direction, as we know, that can be so very destructive. And even our spiritual paths fall prey to this. I like to say that the key to the spiritual awakening is humility. And we can believe that we're progressing, we can think that we're doing so many great things, but without humility, without realizing that on my own I can do nothing, but that everything good that I do comes not from me as an identity, but from me getting out of the way and letting the Spirit work through me. This is where the real work is, and it's so needed today. So I'm just grateful to be at this stage in my life and to be still hanging out with my friend Phil and to be able to be here with all of you. So I don't know, Phil, if you want to take this in another direction, but I'll just follow where you lead. Oh, I think you're muted, Phil.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Just wail. Just
Well, maybe I should sing something.
okay.
That's always a good segue, or because we can talk and we can get all focused in our brains, but the thing about music, especially prayers that have been placed to music, is that they take us deeper than the words and the concepts do on their own. I like to say that when we hear someone talking, like I've been talking to you here, all the information you're hearing is going through the front door of your consciousness. And right behind that front door, there are many, many filters, all based upon things you've learned, experiences you've had in the past, ideas, judgments, all of that. And that information has to go through that filter before, all of those filters before it can get in. And often it filters out so much. The thing about music and art and prayer is that it slides around to the backside and enters through the back door where there are no filters, and it enters fully intact. St. Augustine once said that when we sing, we pray twice. So since I'm talking so much about St. Francis, I'll share a prayer that is often attributed to Francis, though Francis did not write the prayer of St. Francis. We don't have to go into how it was found. No one actually knows who wrote it, but it is so associated with him, and I think it does really beautifully encompass everything that he did teach us. So one second, let me just change my chair around here a little bit, and we'll share that. So I'll invite you just to, if you want, to close your eyes or take a few deep breaths. And even if you've heard this prayer hundreds of times before, I'll invite you to listen to it tonight as if it's the first time, as if you're hearing this anew. Make me an instrument of your peace. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, bring your love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, bring your faith. Where there is despair, your hope. Where there is darkness, bring your light. And where there is sadness, your joy. O divine Master, grant that we may not seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. I am now your instrument, beloved. For it is in giving that we receive, in pardoning that we are pardoned, and in dying to ourselves that we live. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. Sing that line with me, wherever you are. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. Feel the power of those words. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. One more time, oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace, of your peace. Take a deep breath. Just feel those words resonating deeply inside you. I am an instrument of peace. That's how I was created, and that's how I remain. If only I would surrender. If only I would let the strings of my heart be played instead of trying to do it all on my own. To surrender and trust. I am an instrument of peace. You know, as I'm singing that, I'm reminded of an adventure. I've had so many adventures in my life, but this may be my favorite. It's an experience that I had last year, at the beginning of the year, right before COVID hit. I had written a one-man musical based on the life of St. Francis. And I had already done it in quite a few places around the world, but I decided that I wanted to imitate Francis as best as I could. So I would travel across the country from the West Coast to the East Coast with no money, with no credit cards, with no idea how I was going to get from place to place or where I would stay, on the way to New York, where I would do it for 2 weeks as an off-Broadway musical. And we already had, I think, about 25 shows along the way to New York. But once again, how we would get, I was with my friend Bill Free, how we would get there and how we would eat and all of that was still a matter of total trust. And it ended up being just one of the most fantastic journeys of my life, and so many beautiful miracles and blessings. And I always started the musical off with that prayer, because I think it sets the tone. It teaches us something that I think is so needed here today. The thing that we need to remember is that an instrument can't play itself. Like this, for example. If it had an imagination, maybe it could play in its mind. It could imagine that the strings are vibrating and that beautiful music is coming from the strings or the wood. But as we know, if it's only when it surrenders into the hands of the master musician that the strings begin to vibrate. And that's what it means to be an instrument of peace. We have to surrender. We have to be humble. We have to ask to be used. And if we can fall back into the arms of the beloved to that degree, as people like Francis did and so many others, then we are used by God. We are played and we make an impact in the world that is just unbelievable and not something we can even imagine. So as I'm singing that, I'm reminded of that beautiful journey that I took across the country. And then, of course, COVID hit, as we know. And, someone asked before we started the recording about my life here in Mexico. I did move to Mexico originally about 7.5 years ago, but then I left and came back. A small town called Ajijic, which is on Lake Chapala, right outside Guadalajara. It's the biggest expat community in the whole world, and for Americans and Canadians. Back in the 20s, I think it was 1924, Paramahansa Yogananda came here, and he prophesied at that time that one day there would be a great awakening here in this town, and that this would be a major center for enlightenment. And not much happened, but suddenly here today in the last few years, there's been a blossoming of beautiful spiritual expressions and communities. I ended up buying what was a B&B, 11-room B&B, and starting Namaste Village. In 2.5 years, we went from 11 very small apartments to 41 houses, casitas, apartments, and we just have this beautiful, vibrant community here, which you're all welcome to come and join us. We just have and this town, by the way, has the second best weather in the world, was voted the #1 place in the world to live on a budget. So it is just an extraordinary place. And I think Yogananda's prophecy is coming to fruition right now. So that's where I am right now. Phil.
Yeah, I just, in hearing that song again, you can imagine how many times I've heard you play that song. And my first introduction to you in Loveland, Colorado, at the Sound World Sound Healing Conference that year, 95, I think it was, that was how you came to my attention when hearing that song and what it connected in me. And then, of course, the first book had come out, Emissary of Light, which I still advise everyone to read. I think that is such a seminal text. I mean, you know, by putting those peace prayers of the 12 major religions to music, coming out with that first CD, and then being invited all around the world in war-torn areas. I mean, where fighting was actually going on, right? Bombs were bursting, to do peace concerts. You became the peace troubadour. And you didn't dub yourself that. You were dubbed the peace troubadour. Even, I don't know if people remember or even know that even like Saddam Hussein invited you to do a televised peace concert in Iraq at the time.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that that led you to be privy to witness the actual workings of a group of very special peacemakers who incarnate, who group, who come together at various times in our history, when there's conflict, when there's war, when we need to remember that sense of community, when we need to remember that we all can become fountains of divine light. You got to see the inner workings. You may not have totally understood. You understood it through your filters, but that was the magic and the beauty of it. You actually got to see this circle of emissaries, these peacemakers, and how they, through their meditations, the one in the middle, the master, or they all became fountains of divine light. And I realized that the stuff that I was teaching at the time and that I still continue to teach, the ascension teachings, are the same, because what we're trying to do is trying to create that same phenomenon, or to remember that we can all be beacons, we can all be lighthouses. There's a lot of ships lost at sea. We become what Jesus, how he referenced Mary Magdalene as being in the effulgence of light, that just by her presence, she can heal, or healing can happen just by illuminating what needs to be illuminated. Going back to those simple lessons of trust and surrender, and all the stuff we're experiencing now, even the stuff that I teach, if I don't integrate the attitudes and etiquette of spiritual mastery and those simple lessons that you learned or was reminded from the emissaries, what good is all the other work? What good is rediscovering our roots, hybrids, indigos, whatever, if we can't also integrate those lessons, those simple lessons of peace and humility and grace and forgiveness and love, trust, and surrender and gratitude for all the gifts of the Holy Spirit? Or even the work that I do is incomplete, So I think that experience, it's almost like going full circle, and all these adventures over the last 25 years. And for you personally, and I think that your journey's been a metaphor for all of us in our coming into wholeness and returning to innocence. And this is why I'm just so happy that you can share part of your journey, and how you came to be where you are now with all of us here. I think that's such an important component, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. For those people who don't know the book Emissary of Light, what Phil is referring to, it was the first time after I put the peace prayers from the 12 major religions of the world to music, I felt like a peace troubadour should be willing to go to where peace is needed. And at that time, which was 1995, that was Bosnia and Croatia and the whole Balkan region. So I got myself invited to come to Croatia and spent several weeks there traveling, doing different concerts. And ultimately, I was brought into the mountains right on the border of Bosnia and Croatia to be with this group of mystics called the Emissaries of Light. And it was 13 people, men and women. They would come together every night at midnight around this 12-spoked wheel, and they would be meditating there, one in the center, the other 12 around the wheel, for 12 hours from midnight until noon every day. And they called it the extension of divine light. And they said that there had been communities like theirs doing this in one way or another, one place or another, for thousands of years, that they were part of a very long lineage of light workers, always conducted in a place of great violence, because they said when it's dark, when it's pitch dark, that's where the bright light has the greatest effect. And being able to be there for the week or so that I was sitting in the room while they were meditating, it was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. But ultimately, their message and the message that they asked me to share just came to a few words. They said, just go tell people that they're ready. Just tell them that you're ready for this. You don't need to keep trying to get ready. There comes a point in a moment where you realize, I am ready. I can step into my own mastery. I can play the role that I chose to play before time began. And I think we're all here on purpose. I don't think any of us showed up at this time by accident. It's because we knew that this was it. This was the time of the great awakening. And many of us look at the world and the divisions and the polarizations, and we think that it's proof that that's not true. I think it's proof that it is true. That all of this is happening. It's the perceptual minds or the ego's last breath trying to reassert its authority. But what is happening really through people like all of you and programs like this is that the light is becoming so bright and the momentum is so great that there's no turning back. And so that's why it's so important for us to realize that we are ready, that we are here to play an important role. And if we can just keep saying yes and following the guidance, stay humble and allow it to happen, then we realize that we were right all along, that we were born here, that we chose to be here at this time, and that we all have a very important role to play. How are we doing on time? Should we open up for questions, do you think? Yeah, let's open it up for some questions, see if you guys have anything you'd like to share or ask.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So this is the time if you guys have any questions.
I see Kiara just posted on the chat.
Yeah.
That last time, Jimmy, you and Kiara, and you have a history too, was in Ephesus, right?
Oh, was it? Okay.
15 years ago, right? And
Something
Kiara
like-
also mentioned that you were acted as also matchmaker. Is that right, Kiara?
Did I?
Yeah, Kiara, you with us?
Hey.
Wait till you hear this. You may not remember this, Jimmy, but Kiara reminded me that
No,
you
that's
introduced
actually
him
true.
to the woman that would be. Oh, there you go, Kiara. Okay.
Yeah. No, remember, Jimmy, this was back in Mount Shasta when I was doing my first book signing.
Oh
The
yeah,
book
I totally
that you
remember now.
almost wrote a foreword to. And Grace was walking around town. You had been doing things in Marin County with Grace and Will at that time.
Yes, I
So you
remember.
happened to run across her on the street and said, oh, she said, you got to go to that book signing. And then you didn't show up, but Grace did. And that's when I met her. And
Wow.
then we stayed together for a while. And then the last time you and I met was in Turkey at Mother Mary's house, remember?
I do remember, yes. Just above Ephesus. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Right, right.
It's funny because, there have been so many stories, so many wonderful adventures, but then as soon as I get that one piece, it clicks in. Thanks
Right.
for being here, brother.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you've been a big part of my own journey.
It's wonderful how we connect and how we influence, and just in simple ways we can change the course of someone's life for the better. Just inviting someone to a book signing can change everything.
Right.
Anybody else have a question or anything they want to share?
Kim made a comment that you ordained her in Loveland.
Yes,
Kim,
I
you wanna-
saw Kim. Hi, Kim. Good to see you. Yeah, I ran a seminary program for many years called the Seminary of Spiritual Peacemaking. I think it was a 2-year program. I think we ordained 500 or 600 people over the years, many of whom are still out doing amazing work, peace work and ministerial work all over the world. So good to see you, Kim. I did notice you before.
I had a memory the other day. I think it was a daydream or something. You remember the cloth of many colors?
Yes, of course.
This was amazing because I was staying with friends of mine in Long Island, and the thing was I don't remember what inspired it, but the idea was to make a what are those? What's the thing called again?
Oh, there was a quilt, and of course,
quilt.
it started when I was in one of the peace journeys. I was in Kosovo during the conflict there with Serbia, and I had been to so many places like that already. And each time we would ask people to be focusing their prayers of peace at a given moment when I would be doing a concert or something else. And miracle after miracle would happen. And one night when I was there in Kosovo, I had a dream. And in this dream, I saw this quilt that was made up of maybe millions of tiny little pieces of cloth that someone in the world had prayed with and imbued with the energy of peace. And in the dream, it was being wrapped around the base of the United Nations in New York. So I woke up thinking, what an amazing idea. So I thought, let's just see if it flies. So I put out a couple of emails and sharing the idea. And I gave an address. I was living in Joshua Tree, California at the time, and gave an address where if anyone wants to do this, please send it in. Well, before long, we were getting the majority of the mail in Joshua Tree, California. We would have to go with the pickup truck nearly every day to pick up the boxes of mail. Hundreds and thousands of letters every day started coming in, all with a piece of cloth, and many with a story of how maybe they had wiped their tears away after being tear gassed during the Vietnam War, or maybe this was something that belonged to a beloved parent or someone that they loved who was dedicated to peace. Beautiful stories. And we had to get volunteers all over the world to begin to sew them together. And I think it was in 2000, it was September of 2000, that this quilt, once we put it all together, was a mile in length. And we were in California, and we were invited to come and bring it to the United Nations. And just getting a mile-long quilt across the country was no easy feat. So we got it there. We had this beautiful ceremony inside the UN. We then took it to Washington, D.C., where we took a portion of it into the Pentagon. And also we had a ceremony at the U.S. Capitol where it was wrapped around the base of the Capitol by members of Congress. But there's one story in particular that I want to tell you that once again shows us just how powerful our intentions are. And while I'm talking, I'm going to see if I can find something I can actually show this to you.
Well, yeah, I was staying with remember Steve and I can't remember her name. We were getting hundreds of pieces. We did a lot of the sewing.
Right.
I remember, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we were freaking out. Hundreds of pieces of cloth and quilt came, and you could feel the energy in them and sewing them. It was just such a wonderful dharma to be doing that.
Well, the pinnacle of the whole thing was this story, and this was a few years after that original push to get the cloth out. I was doing a tour, and I was going all over the country. I think that was when we did 64 concerts in 64 days. And the final couple of concerts were at the U.S. Capitol, where we got a permit to be on the western lawn of the U.S. Capitol. And then the final one was back at the United Nations. When we were at the U.S. Capitol, there was a peace organization there that had a very large section of the quilt, and they wanted to put it on display on the lawn. So I said, let's put it on the lawn in the shape of a huge peace sign, and we'll do the concert from the inside of the peace sign. And it was a beautiful day, and there we were, and people were driving by. Some were honking, some weren't. And when the concert was over, we wrapped it up and moved on. And the next morning, something very interesting happened. We received a phone call from the U.S. Capitol Police, because apparently something had changed. When they came and changed shifts or whatever it was in the morning, and the sun came up, they looked at where we had been the day before, and suddenly there on the grass was this enormous peace sign. The grass had grown longer and greener overnight where the quilt had been the day before. And there it was. And they were not happy about this. They thought we had done some sort of covert peace action, put some chemical on the lawn. I don't know what they thought. And we assured them that we didn't do anything except pray. And I don't, let me see if I can share a screen, because I can show you a picture of the peace sign here. Oh, it's disabled. So is there any way that
I just made it capable of sharing.
Okay, good, good. All right, let me bring this photo up here. Okay, this is the photo. Actually, it was Dennis Kucinich's wife who was able to get up on the balcony. And I'll move. Do you see this right here? There's the circle. And there's the long line. And you can see that's where the quilt lay the day before. So we call that the miracle of the U.S. Capitol sign.
I remember.
Once again, it just shows the amazing power of our joined intention. When we realize that we are called to be instruments of peace, and we activate that power not only individually but globally, it has an enormous impact.
Beautiful. See, we have a question for you from Ross.
Hello, James. How you doing?
Good. Hi, Ross.
Yes. Hi. We have met long time ago in the galaxy far away. It was in Phoenix, Arizona.
Convention, wasn't it?
No, it was in Phoenix, Arizona. I used to live in Scottsdale, the most livable city, quote unquote, years ago. But anyway, at the Unity of Phoenix, Reverend Richard. Reverend Richard Mirage. No, now it's Mirage. Now it's before Mirage. There was a Reverend Richard. He was the main guy. Yes, you have gave presentation, couple of these presentation at Unity of Phoenix. So we have met there. So I don't know if you remember, but anyway, so I always remembered you. It was always inspirational, and you are basically still staying on the same message. And that was probably back in 2007, 2006. So that was a long time ago. But anyway, my question is, so you are into spirituality, and you are very consciously aware of what's going on in today's world, how the consciousness is evolving, transforming, and basically growing. And we know how it's in United States. Yes, it's growing, it's evolving. Since you are in Mexico, can you share a little bit, how is the level of consciousness and awareness because of this virus, because of this lockdown and everything else? How is Mexico is being transformed? Are there, you mentioned one community, spiritual community, are there many other ones? Are there like pods of communities in Mexico? Are the Mexicans are growing the same way as Americans or not? What is your pulse from that country?
Well, I can't say too much about what's going on all over Mexico, only really what's going on here in this area. And I can say there's an enormous amount, even though this is a very small town, so many communities and so many teachers and shamans who are coming here. I lived in Ashland, Oregon for many, many years. This is kind of like living in Mexican Ashland. There are always so many fun things, dances and ceremonies and you name it, it's all going on here. And for the last year and a half, we've called living here PIP, which means Pandemic in Paradise. Because luckily, I don't know why, maybe it's the vibration of the place, we were only very gently impacted by the COVID. And no one here in our community became sick, which I think is incredible. But we get together here 6 days a week, every morning. You can find the YouTubes on. You can find the morning sessions that we record every day on YouTube. If you just put Namaste session, put my name, you'll find them. When we started doing the Zoom sessions when the pandemic started, and we'll have sometimes 100 or more people every morning with us, including the people here who live at Namaste Village. So I can say here in this area, it's a very high vibration. And I love Mexico. I just love living here. It's such a gentle, livable city, country. People often think, living in Mexico, it's so dangerous. Like, okay, keep thinking that, because we don't want everybody to move down here. But for those who do move here, most of them within a very short period of time say what I say, which is, there's no way I would ever live back in the US again. This is such a beautiful place to live, and the Mexican people are so kind and so rich. But once again, it's not riches, it's richness. There's a richness here that is, so beautiful, and I'm just so grateful to have our community here.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Do you know Neil Donald Walsh by any chance, since you live in Ashland?
He's one of my dearest friends.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. He just came out with a new book. Yes, very, very enlightened person. Yes. So awesome. Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Thank you for sharing.
I see that Piera has her hand up. Hi, Piera.
Yeah. Hildegard, do you want to put yours back up? Sorry.
Well, it's
Yeah,
okay.
you can
Piera
unmute
can
now.
go.
Yeah.
Piera, go ahead, and I'll go after. That's not a problem.
Okay. Hi, James.
Good to see you.
Thank you. I love this vibration. It feels so good. I feel so at peace. I just want to ask a question. In the spiritual community, there's different viewpoints about who God is or what God is, and the light versus dark duality. And some say that God is a light and the rest is evil. And then there's the other viewpoint of that God is everything. God is also the dark. And that doesn't sit so well with me. And I just wanted to know what you thought of that, what your opinion is on it, and why.
Great question. Trying to answer the big God question. The first thing I'll say is, and I often say this now because it's the truth, I gave up believing in God a long time ago. Now let me explain. Because I am, I'm a Franciscan, I'm a very God sort of guy. But it used to be that, most of us were raised to imagine this God out there somewhere, usually an old white man with a long white beard. Ridiculous. This entity, this being that is all seen. And the more you think about that, or even try to imagine it, the more you realize how limited that is. So when I say I don't believe in God, what I do believe in is only God. Now, this is what we call non-duality. And I'll give you a really quick example to explain what non-dual spirituality is all about, because it's something that we hear a lot about today, but people don't understand it. Basically, it's what I just expressed, that there is an ultimate reality where there is only one thing that's going on, okay? Religion, perception is all about duality, good, bad, dark, light, God, Satan, that's what religion is all about. But the spiritual experience brings us into a place of unified consciousness where we realize not just because intellectually thinking it does nothing, leads nowhere. It's an experience that one has, an awakening that takes place within them, where suddenly the tumblers fall into place, all the lights go off, and you see that which has always been. It's like putting on glasses, and you didn't realize that your eyesight was so terrible that you were misinterpreting everything that you were seeing because you weren't seeing it clearly. Suddenly you put glasses on, it's like, I can see. So actually, let me give you my little 1-minute demonstration of the difference between non-dual and dual. Here's what I want everybody to do. Take your finger, just one of your fingers, and put it up like this, and look at your finger. Look straight at it. Focus on that finger. Now, if you're like me, you see one finger because there's only one finger that's up, right? Now, what I want you to do is to look through the finger to the other side of the room. Look to the wall on the other side of the room of wherever you're sitting, and then ask yourself the question, how many fingers do you see now?
2.
If you're like me, you see 2. Now you see 2 fingers. But now refocus again on your finger, and you realize there were never 2 fingers. There's only one finger there the entire time. That's what we mean by non-dual. It's a simple shift in focus from looking out there where things can appear many different ways to having an experience where I refocus on the one and I see what is really there. So my experience of God is very different than it used to be. I don't, as I said, I don't believe that there is a God, an entity, a being. I believe that the easiest way to understand God is simply to love. God is love, and therefore so am I, as it says in A Course in Miracles. So if we can keep it simple and don't try and figure it out intellectually, because you can't. That's the thing we usually try and do. We try and get it rather than letting it get us. We try to figure it out rather than letting it figure us out. And that's why, as we said before, it keeps coming back to surrendering and trusting and allowing and being humble, realizing I don't know. Just this morning at our morning session, we were reading my favorite paragraph from A Course in Miracles, where it basically says, it begins by saying, simply do this. And then it goes on to a whole list of things. Lay aside every idea you've ever had. Set aside every thought, every concept. And then at the very end, it says, come with wholly empty hands unto your God. In other words, let it all go. Be empty. Don't think you know anything, because you don't. But you can be shown everything if we just get out of our own way and let it be revealed. So, Pierre, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's the best I can do.
Yeah, that's great. It's perfect. It's a great analogy. And I just intuitively, to me, it doesn't feel like God can be anything but a perfect source of, but that's my own personal viewpoint of it. I just never understood the whole God is both dark and evil and light, and it just never made sense to me.
Yeah, and once again, that's trying to make sense of something that we can't make sense of. What we're doing is we're looking to the evidence outside here and trying to push God into that, rather than, once again, having the experience. I'll say it again, we can't figure it out. We're never going to be able to figure it out intellectually. But if we give up the need to try and figure out what God is, it'll reveal itself to us on its own.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Good to see you.
So nice to see you.
I'm going to have to leave here soon, but maybe we can take 2 or 3 more quick ones.
Okay, Hildegard, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, my question, and thank you so much for sharing, James. Really amazing to be here with you this evening. With regards to let go and let God, many people want to make a difference in the world. And as you just said in answering Pierre's question, you can't figure things out. You just have to surrender and let it go. any guidance, many humanitarians, and I'm going to do this project and I do that project. What do you have? And I'm including myself in this because there's this big vision which gets very overwhelming for the left brain. I know, of course, this is not how it comes about, looking back in my own life. The things that always worked out, I always felt had no hand in whatsoever. But can you maybe reiterate a little or share a little about your experience, how you got to create the situation, the life you just have, with respect to the retreat and to the Namaste Center?
My basic philosophy, and I guess my secret, is to chase it down the street. Don't try and plan it. Just go. What most people do is they have an inspiration and then they say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make a spreadsheet. I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And they never get the momentum that they need to be able to have spirit take hold of it and manifest it in a way that we can't even begin to imagine in our plans. So what I've always done is if an inspiration comes, I just go. I start, like the cloth of many colors. I didn't try and figure out how we were going to build a mile-long quilt and how we would get it to New York and how all of if I had tried to figure any of that out, nothing would have happened, I can guarantee it, because I'm so limited in my ability to figure things out, as all of us are. But what I did was I followed the prompts along the way. I just started, put out a couple of emails. Next thing you know, all these letters are coming, and we just kept chasing it down the street, letting it show us what it wanted to do or be, rather than trying to figure it out. So that's what I usually recommend, is be spontaneous. Don't think that you're here to save the world. See, usually we come up with these big grandiose things, like I'm going to do this great thing, this great project, and everyone's going to know who I am. But then you forget the essential quality of humility and to realize that I can't do anything. There's nothing I can do on my own. But if I keep surrendering, I keep following the guidance and let it guide me into where it needs to be, that's where the miracle happens. So there you go, Hildegard.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Welcome, dear.
I love that. Thanks.
Did you ever do this one where you see you put your two fingers together and then you see that little cocktail hot dog in between?
Yep. That's another good one.
One more question.
Yeah.
Anybody? Anthony, did you?
We've got Carol and Loney, so let's just do those real quick.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carol. Oh, you have to unmute yourself, dear.
I'm clicking the wrong box. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Okay, now is this what you're talking about? I had pneumonia, so I called it a near-death experience. And you're talking about surrender. So I had actually I've got a very quick presentation, but I'll just speak it. I had pneumonia, and I asked for a glimpse of heaven. And I was above the earth was like a blue marble. And I was in some kind of a spiritual body. And I turned and there was this being in silhouette. The light behind it was blue-white like a welder's torch. Our sun was yellow compared to this light. The being had long hair and a long robe. It was neither male nor female. I was in a Christian frame of mind at the time, and I took it to be Christ. It could have been Muhammad, it could have been Yahweh. The love that was coming from it was unconditional. It had so much love for humanity. I asked if it knew what was going on down there on earth. I went to speak about my life as an example, and it saw into my heart. There was no misunderstanding. It was just telepathy, and I cried. I asked about the Holocaust, the worst things that have gone on the face of the earth, but I didn't get an answer to that. I was told to give up everything on earth. I thought about the earth, the air, fire, water, plants, and animals, and I thought I would never see them again. The more I let go, the more I surrendered, the greater the love. I was told to give even the love I had for my mother. I was like a child with a teddy bear. I let go and I kept hanging on. And this being was behind me, reassuring me. And I thought, well, she's in the universe, she's in God, so I let go. I surrendered. The love was ecstasy. It was bliss. It was exquisite. It was euphoria. I was getting drunk in the spirit. I stood alone, and then I stood alone. I was the only thing in the universe. It was terrifying. It was like I was God. Initially, it was terrifying because God has no one to go to. That's my thinking at the time. Then I wasn't me anymore. I was sheer consciousness. And then these highly evolved beings told me I had to go back and give out love any way I could. And I woke up and I tried to get back into it. And I didn't want to come back. And like millions of others, I've got no fear of death.
It's beautiful. What a beautiful experience. And I would say that an experience like that is a great gift. And then the question is, what do we do with that gift? And what hopefully happens with anyone who has that experience is that they come back with a new perspective, as I'm sure you did, where you are able to relax more into the experience of what we'll call grace, or call it whatever you want. But to know that, well, right down below me, there's a beautiful painting that a painter did of Julian of Norwich, who was an anchoress rather, in I think the 1700s. And her most famous line is, "All is well, and all is well, and all manner of things shall be well." That's where the experience guides us, no matter what is happening. Those are my three favorite words, by the way. No matter what. No matter what is happening, all is well. And if I can just trust that and relax. So thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
I thought it was whatever. What happened? Whatever happened to whatever?
Same thing. That's a whole nother, we won't get into that. How about Loney? Do you have a question?
Yes. You know, in the United States, we've had many, many, many gun deaths, and people are divided at this point in time. And I was just wondering if we could have some prayers for peace for all of that gun violence and division, so that we could all become one and not many. Because I do believe in the power of prayer, and we need it today.
Yeah, we sure do. Now, the thing.
You want to take us home with a song? You want to leave us with?
Let me say one quick thing about what Loney just said. We can be very overwhelmed by where things seem to be, but we have to remember, first of all, that everything that's happening outside of us is an outpicturing of our mind being healed. And just like with any healing, things really have to get very divided and very difficult until it all comes together. A Course in Miracles says there's only one problem and there's only one solution. The problem is you think you're separate from God and from everything else. The solution is you're not. So the best thing, I think, is to observe what's going on, but not to be swayed and pulled into it and to begin to feel, powerless and as if there's no hope. Because as I said earlier, I think this is the sign that everything is going perfectly. And if we could just trust that and play our role, keep our spirits high, keep just turning everything over, surrendering everything we talked about here tonight, we'll find the solution. So thank you, Loney. Thanks, Phil. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and see what kind of prayer we can end with here. One second. Right now, I'm memorizing a new musical that I'll be performing around Christmas time of this year. It's a musical based on the story of how Francis started the first Christmas nativity scene back in 1224 in a town called Greccio. And there is a song that I wrote many years ago that is in that musical that reminds us that angels are all around us every moment. We just have to have the eyes to see them. So this song is called Entertaining Angels. entertaining angels. I'm opening the door. Everyone who comes to me is an angel to adore. The angel that I've been waiting for. I can't seem to understand why you chose me out of everyone. You know how many ways I have tried. But every time I look around, I see that you're the only one. An angel straight from heaven by my side. And this angel straight from heaven I won't deny. That's a shortened version of the song, but it felt appropriate to remind us that angels are around us every moment. We just have to open up our eyes to see. So thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And what I'd like to do now is, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to just share their experience for tonight. I know James has some other things. If you can stick around, we'd love to have you, but we understand if you need to go.
I have an appointment I need to get to, but I'm just so grateful to all of you for taking the time and just sending you all so much love. Phil, many blessings. Looking forward to seeing you, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you, bro.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so
Muchas
much.
gracias.
Thank you. Good night.
Hermano.
Wow. So Anthony, you popped up. Do you have a comment that you want to make about tonight?
Yeah, it was right up my street. It was amazing. Thank you. Yeah, it's, you know, everyone looks for confirmation, but it's kind of things that have been happening to me the last few years have been leading. Yeah, it just I don't know. It's just strange. I mean, I know. I suppose a couple of years ago, after I went to an event in Laughlin, and I met Grant and Paola and people, and I was having experiences with feathers falling out of the sky prior to going. Anyway, I won't go on about that. But when I came back, I was having visions of things like the Ankh symbol, and there was one occasion where I've never heard voices. I've never heard. Yeah, it had been telepathy, if you like, with whatever, I don't know what, but some sort of communication going on. But there was one time where I heard a voice, only once, and it was in I don't know why, but it was in Spanish, and all it was I love you very much, and it was just, I can't explain it. It's just weird. But I just thought I'd just share that one little thing. That was all.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
No worries.
Would anyone else like to share an experience that they may have had tonight, or thoughts that came up?
Okay, since everybody's shy, I have to speak a minute. You know, love does a lot of things. And I mean, spiritual love, human love, animal love, the love between all of the creations. And, you know, one time, and I won't go into it here, it's a long story, but one time I was on the other side and I knew where I was because my mother, who had passed many years before, was standing in front of me. Couldn't touch her, but I could talk to her. And I knew that there was something going to happen, and I thought it was me. I thought I was going to be able to join in that blissful place and be with my mother again, and it was not. And she said I had to go back because, and you've heard this story before, a few of you, where I am, there is love. And, you know, we don't talk about loving people enough. We don't talk about loving, you know, what things that we should do. And that loving, Mark had said in one of his things is that forgive. They don't know what they're doing, even if they are adults right now, because they may not be adults in the Creator's eyes. And that we just need to spread that energy of love. And I just wanted to throw that out there, that if everybody would just share a moment of energy of love and just send it out, just momentarily, maybe we could stop a lot of the things that are going on, because we don't have to be involved in them to do them. We just heard that, but we could just send that out so that someone who wasn't feeling love won't pick up a gun, but they'll feel something and know that life's worth living, because they don't care if they get killed. So that's all I'd like to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Loni. I really appreciate that. And I see Barbara has joined us. Hello, Barbara. I went ahead and did an introduction of you and talked about how, yeah, you'll need to unmute. If you can unmute. Yeah, just, yeah, down in the bottom. There you go.
Think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Am I? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Actually, I heard most of James Twyman, luckily here on FaceTime, since I couldn't get on Zoom. So very fortunate. I feel so blessed to have heard a lot of what he was talking about. It was wonderful. What a beautiful being he is. Yeah, absolutely. Great. So is there anything, Sheila, you would like to say about next Monday?
Sure. Would you like to give people a little bit of information about what you'll be speaking about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, through it all, I am a psychotherapist from way, way back in the 1970s. But I'm going to be talking about what Sheila asked me to talk about, which is just different ways that I have helped to expand awareness of various larger aspects, shall we say, in the universe, in existence. And of course, as I was exploring these different methods that I'm going to be talking about Monday, I wasn't really thinking about opening up perspective to a much, much larger picture, but I think it has amounted to that, and I'm very pleased about that. So first of all, way back in 1968, by pure gift and serendipity, I discovered the wonder of movement with music. And it was so entrancing to me. So it felt so expanding that I actually went into the whole field of dance therapy. And I'll be talking about that and how that opened me and others in my teaching up to transcendent states, spiritual states, wonderful spiritual experiences. And then after about 12 years of doing the dance therapy work, that sort of morphed into my learning and then eventually teaching Tai Chi, which was another fantastic opening to the energies of the earth, the energies of the universe, and bringing them through us. Very expanding experience. And that morphed into my going into past life regression therapy work in the mid 1980s, which I'm still doing. And then in 1990, I became aware of crop circles and had a huge moment of enlightenment when I was aware that these patterns were appearing in the fields of Britain from some unknown source. And I've done 27 years of visiting crop circles in England and have a lot to say about that. And then in 1991, I became involved in regressing people to details of their extraterrestrial encounters and have done a tremendous amount of putting attention into the extraterrestrial reality and to finding out as much as we can about that. And by the way, as I was discovering these different aspects, people would ask me to give lectures and interviews about them. So that was a wonderful way of touching more and more people, sharing and helping to expand the consciousness of many other people, many of whom I never did meet, of course, but they still heard some of these subjects from me. And so then eventually I became very involved in knowing about ET human hybrids living on the ships and hybrids living here on Earth, and co-authored a book about the hybrids living here on Earth as wonderful ambassadors from the very benevolent beings out there in space. And then eventually, or intermittently, along with all of this, became involved in knowing about hybrids and have done quite a bit of work with people who are hybrids. And that is a wonderful phenomenon too, that really opens us up to a much larger perspective. So those are some of the things I'm going to be talking about next Monday on Wish Alliance. Looking forward to that.
Yay. Well, we're looking forward to it also. So be sure, everyone, to tell all your friends, and we'll be sending a link out. If you're on our email list, the link will come out probably on Sunday or sometime maybe even later in this week. And speaking of hybrids, Barbara is also going to be one of our speakers on the 2-day online conference that the Wish Alliance is promoting, all about hybrids. So we have Barbara and Darryl Anka, Marie Rodwell. We have our Phil Gruber here. We have Maya Cristobal. We have Valerie Bruno, myself, Alan Steinfeld. We have Rebecca Rose, Neil Garr. We have Jacqueline Smith, and Geraldine will also be joining us. So everyone, please mark that date down for July 24th and 25th. It's 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. both days. That's Pacific time. And you can go to Portal to Ascension to register for that. And so for the rest of the call, what I'd like to do is if anyone has any final comments that they would like to make, or anything came up for them, please feel free to go ahead and unmute, and you can share at this time.
Yeah, it's me, Tony, again, from the UK. just one thing I think we're probably all aware of, or I'd like to think we are. For me, anyway, I think what I've learned is it's more about the reason we're in a body is to be self, I suppose, to experience. But more importantly, is I suppose to be, if you like, to be the expression of the world that you want it to be, and just be that example. And it's probably as simple as that. That's
Beautiful.
it, really.
Thank you, Anthony.
No worries. Thank you.
And Hildegard?
Yeah, I got this profound aha. Whatever it is you feel like doing, just do it, begin it, you know. Boldness has genius. Do not wait to perfect it. I'm just thinking while James was talking, I was not prepared to have children. And it just happened, and you just know what to do in the moment, and you kind of make it up as you go along. This is the process of creation quite naturally. And I just had this massive aha. Never mind anything that I actually accomplished in life, I was never adequately prepared for. And sometimes we get stuck in the tracks, getting it perfect or not quite sure whether it's ready yet. And I got this really big thing thinking, yeah, just do it. So it will be interesting to see where my action goes tomorrow and the day after. You know,
well, it just doesn't happen. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I totally agree. Totally
right?
agree. Yeah.
Just do it. Like, you know, as Tony said so aptly, you know, just be it, and don't be afraid to do you, because only you can do you. Just go for it.
Beautiful.
Well, listen, if anybody wants, I wrote an article about Jimmy many, many, many years ago. And if anybody wants that, maybe I'll just, oh, you know what I'll do? I'll post it on the website.
Beautiful.
That's what I'll do. I wrote I just reread it for the first time in years, and I'm totally impressed. What an amazing piece I wrote about Jimmy. And it was a love letter, really. So I'll post it on the Wish Alliance website later today. All right.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
And also, let's talk about, just briefly, Sheila, let's talk about what's going to happen on the 22nd and the 29th. I'm totally excited.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
July 22nd is the feast day of Mary Magdalene. And we have an extraordinary Magdalene channel. A lot of you already know her. Mariana Leah Hernandez is going to be the speaker, or the vehicle through which the Magdalene will address us, God willing. That's July 22nd. On the 29th, did Barbara leave? Oh no, hi Barbara. Barbara, I finally met in person on the panel. I guess it was a year ago last, November, December, the Portal to Ascension conference in Orange County.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm just so excited about your presentations. I really, really am. They're just so engaging. When I talked about those moments of transcendent poignancy, they really do. Listening to you and others, it really does. The state, it's a transcendent state. It really is such a state of attentiveness, and yet it's sort of like in this but not of this world kind of state, you know.
Wow.
So I really look forward to it's next Thursday, right?
Monday.
Monday, I mean.
Right.
Oh,
thank you.
Okay, and so that's next Monday. Tune in for that. July 22nd and July 29th. A lot of you are familiar with Kaliana Rose Raphael. She's another amazing channel for the divine feminine, but she's also bringing her partner Rama in to talk about the divine masculine. So we don't get that every day. We don't get a balance, integrated, divine feminine and masculine presentation. So I think that's really, really important too. As much as we want to raise the divine feminine back to her rightful place in the spiritual hierarchy, I think it's also important that we also have a consciousness of the balance of the two and the integration, right? So there's that. There's so much to look forward to. I think the best is yet to come, or is now, always here. Yeah. So there you go. That's my piece. And I was so happy to get Jimmy to share with us. I really think that's an important piece too, as far as talking about balance and dynamic equilibrium, you know. Yeah, for Jimmy to remind us of that part of it too. Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
and then on the 15th, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Barbara.
Oh, he is that. You know, I have never heard him before. I've heard of him for years, but I've never witnessed him in any way. And he is what he's talking about. I mean, that is so wonderful. Everything that he said, he just radiates with that. What an exceptional being. Yeah, I'm so pleased that I've had a chance to experience him.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Barbara.
And thank you thanks for coming. And I want to remind everyone also on the 15th is when we have our family reunion, that everyone can kind of introduce themselves. If you've not attended a family reunion before, if you have a story that you would like to share, you can share it at that time. Zariel, I know, is going to share. She's a new person that I've been speaking with, and there are probably others. I was emailing with a lady today and invited her to come as well. And so that'll be on the 15th. So we have a lot going on. If I think everyone is on the email list, if not, please go to wishalliance.org and sign up. Keep checking in with the wishalliance.org for all the activities that we have going on. A lot of times individuals who are part of the Alliance will have events and they'll send them to me and we will post them. I think, Kiara, we have some of your things up now. Hildegard has a meeting every Wednesday night, and you can contact her. And this is about contactees. It's the Toronto contactee group. And then I was going to ask Kiara if I could put you on the spot again, if you could kind of end our evening with one of your beautiful meditations.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to say a couple things before that.
Okay.
You know, listening to Jimmy was like going back through a doorway into my own past. You know, I remember when I was 20 years old in a monastery, you know, I was given the name Francis as well, and wondering the same questions, you know, what do I do with the rest of my life? And Assisi has been a major pilgrimage place for me as well. You know, it's a place I've been going to every year until this last year. And one of the stories that I heard in Assisi when I was there last time is something I'd like to share. So when Francis was actually in Jerusalem on one of his pilgrimages, he was invited to meet the Sultan. And this was one of the major peace projects that he was involved in, because the Crusades were on at that time. Millions of people were being massacred. And so the Sultan told him something which forever changed his life. And he said that when Jesus was on this earth, he was not celibate, as people have made him out to be. And he, in fact, had more than one wife. And the story goes on. But when Francis came back to Assisi with that news, it's like a completely new chapter opened up for him. He said, well, if Jesus could do that, then I would follow in his footsteps as well. And so and he was quite ill by the time he came back. But the last couple of years that he was with Claire, his spiritual partner then became much more magnified as a result of that. And this is something so many people have questioned and debated in their own lives. What's priority for me? Do I give myself to God? Do I, give myself to the world? And it's not two different things. It really isn't. And that's what, the illusion has been that they are two separate things. And so we have split our own lives in the process. And I think, as Jimmy stated so beautifully in his answer to the question about God and duality, everything is, and that's all we need to know. It's not, as soon as we get out of definitions and interpretations and preferences, we enter that experience of God. And that's what we've forgotten.
A quick comment and a question before you start, Kiara. Kim, I think, was it 2004, 2005? We journeyed to Assisi with James. You remember that? Were you on that trip?
I was not there. No.
Well, it was just a beautiful trip to Italy, throughout Italy. But Assisi was very special experience, because I really do think Jimmy, I think he is the essence of St. Francis. I think it's pretty obvious to see. And I remember, and then they literally walked from Assisi to Rome. I didn't. I got on the first plane to Malta because I don't like walking uphill. I decided I'd rather go swimming, but that's just me. And so one last question before we end it. Do you think it's too dark? Do you think I use too much? It's too, normally I dye it kind of like dark brown, but do you think it's too dark? After a few washings, I think it'll be,
No,
it doesn't look too fake, does it?
No, it looks great.
I think
you look
a
younger.
song just went through my head when you asked how about that and everything, and I'm hearing "You're So Vain." If you like it, if
it makes me happy, then it can't be that bad. I know.
That's
okay.
Right.
I think it makes you look younger. I love it.
Stop it. Enough about me. Okay. All right. Kiara, so happy you're taking this home.
Yes, and just one moment, Hildegard asked to make an announcement too. So I just saw your post, Hildegard, if you would like to do that, and then we'll have Kiara take it over. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. We have a very special guest this coming Wednesday, Robin Freeboy. She is talking to us about the Knowledge Book, a 1,000-page book that was written by a lady named Mevlana. And the letters of the book have light photon energy attached to it, and it resonates with the DNA of the reader. A very profound book. I read it many, many years ago, and I thought, what? I don't understand. It's a very interesting book. I don't know if it resonates with you, but I brought it forward and I bring it to the Toronto Experiences on Wednesday because it resonates with many people. And I think it's very profound at this particular point in time. People are looking for something, and maybe the Knowledge Book may be your thing. So if you want to join us, I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out and join us next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for letting me do this here. Kiara, over to you.
How many of you have watched that movie, Brother Sun, Sister Moon? It's really beautiful. And if you haven't, you must. It's the life of St. Francis. And it's a musical. And I watched that when I was in my early college years. And I actually memorized the entire movie, the songs, the dialogues, everything. And you know, that's when I made that link with Francis, with the CC, with, you know, just being peace. And so there's a song from that movie which I'd like to maybe share in closing. So it goes like this. So my voice is still my early morning croak voice, but I'll try and see what comes out. So this is called Brother Sun, Sister Moon. Brother Sun and Sister Moon, I seldom see you, seldom hear your tune. Preoccupied with selfish misery. Brother Wind and Sister Air, open my eyes to visions pure and fair, so that I may see the beauty all around me. I am God's creature, of Him I am found. I feel His love awakening my heart. Brother Sun and Sister Moon, I now do see you, I can hear your tune, so much in love with all that I survey. So imagine yourself in the CC, listening to those words, flying with the wind, feeling the caress of the angels, being in that energy of brotherhood, sisterhood, and peace. The story that was told so long ago and continues. And it's a story of simplicity, of remembrance, of beauty, of a simple sharing of love without attachments, without conditions. A love that extends to all of nature, to the sun, the stars, the wind, to the wolves and the bears, to all creatures, high and low. It's a love that extends to the earth herself, listening back in every whisper of sound, in every act of creation. This is what we're born for. This is what we have to give back. This is why we are here. And so grateful now to join each one of you in this beautiful earth, in this beautiful space, in this beautiful time. Oh.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So beautiful. Thank each of you also for coming tonight, for holding this space, for opening up, for hearing what James had to say, and all of the comments, the questions, for that beautiful prayer. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a beautiful night, and we will see you next Monday with Barbara's presentation on the 15th, on the 22nd, and the 29th. So until then, have a beautiful week. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Sheila.
Yara, you sang that beautifully. I love your voice.
Thanks.
It was beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you.
It was so peaceful the way you sang it. Your voice is transcendent.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
And the
Good night.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Lonely, you were fun too.
So music.
Go Lonely.
Thank you.